a jack at you. And suddenly I realized, surely he really hit it. And so I phoned Miss Schmidt, Fräulein Schmidt, and asked if I could have an appointment. And she laughed and said, oh, yes, she said, Professor Jung told me to save some time for you. He thought you'd be calling shortly.
And sometimes he'd be quite unfair to one. And he'd tell me, at the club, for instance, he'd go and something speak hurried to people. And then he'd go home saying, now, wasn't that nasty of me? I really spoilt their weekend and saw shows on Saturday evenings. But when they next came to analysis, he found that that particular nastiness was exactly what they wanted, what they needed. I really got more from Jung when he hit me over the head than any other time. I don't mean literally.
He had very small eyes, and when he looked through those little eyes, well, usually over the top of his eyeglasses, you knew that he was looking at something that you couldn't see. And what came out was usually some very simple fact. It wasn't any aura or any great message that came back from the beyond. It was something about your ordinary life or the ordinary situation. I described a party where I felt the shadow got loose, with Jung in the center of it, where they threw a knotted towel from one person to another around a circle. Jung kept this thing going almost beyond endurance, and I fell down and broke my glasses, and somebody else skinned a knee, and at the end of the party we were all in shambles, but this was characteristic of Jung's intolerance of persona. He was so afraid that the party would stick on a polite persona level that he engineered it to bring out the shadow. And in the end, we all had a marvelous time. We all got drunk, and it was it ended very happily.
He became a human being. And a total one. I mean, he included everything. he could be terrible.
He could be terrible.
He could be absolutely terrible.
Oh, in these races.
Yeah. I remember one thing when we sailed on the lake up there, Bollingen, you know, in his boat, and there was the wind died down completely, and we were way up from the Turm, you know.
I see. Yes.
Way off, and so there was nothing else but to row. And I was an old sailor, and you know, I knew how to row, indeed, better than he did, as a matter of fact.
And was young.
So I went and rowed, and he started criticizing me for every single part of a movement I made with those rows, you know. And he knew it better, of course.
Oh, and did he row himself?
Joan was in the boat as well, my wife, and so it was absolutely, it was hell. It was real hell. Until I said, good, fine, do it yourself.
Yes, but you finally said. And he did it?
Yes, he had to.
Oh, he had to if you gave.
He had to. Yes. I wouldn't make one single move.
So, and did he ever apologize for
No.
Really?
Oh, he could be terrible. Oh, he could be really terrible.
When I was his secretary, he grumbled at me with a very loud voice, and he didn't like when I took it personally, so I took it, and sooner or later there was a big and very beautiful, how do you say, Belohnung, recompense, a compensation. He compensated. He knew exactly what he had done, and then one was rewarded if one could stand it, and if one didn't took it personally. You see, he was so burdened by his ideas and by people outside and his inner figures. So I understood it quite well. He had to have a let out, was heißt ventil.
Ventilate.
And vent out. The steam has to go out.
Yes. And it sometimes came out on you when you were there.
Yes, why not?
Yeah.
The personal shadow is the personal shortcomings of things which every human being could be conscious of, which is not archetypal. For instance, such things as greed for money or jealousy, inferiorities which everybody has, but prefers not to know about. If one is jealous or if one is suddenly possessed by wanting money or so on, one could know about it if one is honest with oneself. But the collective shadow has to do with the dark side of the archetype of the self. That means it's the shadow of the God image. In the Christian tradition it would be the devil. And that has always been personified and felt as something which has not to do directly with the human being. I mean, if somebody is possessed by the devil, he's much worse than just, he's not human, it's demonic. And but on the other hand, generally that merges. First you have this area of dim, dark side, and behind it lurks the other. I, for instance, seen that when Germany went to the devil in Nazism, people fell into it through their personal shadow. For instance, they didn't want to lose their job because they were clinging to money. That was their personal shadow. But then they joined in with the Nazi movement for that reason and did much worse things than they would have done normally under normal social conditions. So you can say the personal shadow is the bridge to the collective shadow, or the open door to the collective shadow. But the collective shadow comes up in those terrible mass psychoses. It's like if you have a room and there's one door not shut, and there the devil can come in. And if you know your personal shadow, you can shut all the doors.
I think that it's quite an important fact historically that there were very few of us that intentionally became analysts. What happened was that we all had neuroses, and we were nice, fat, juicy ones, and we were vibrating like an Aeolian harp in a high wind. And very often this was exacerbated by a marriage relationship, and so that most of us of my generation didn't prepare to be an analyst, but we went to an analyst so that he could tinker with our psyches. And somewhere along the line we'd say, wouldn't it be peachy if I could be one of those too?
I have to remember our first appointment, because Joe and I went together, and he talked right over the top of my head to Joe, arranging my appointments. And I finally said, well, where do I come in? And he said, oh, that comes later. And I'll never forget that.
Jane and I arrived in Zurich in 1932. We had a very deep bond between the two of us, but we also were very dissimilar. And so we got into horrendous clashes and crashes. We just were anxious to get a hold of